recording? Yep.
Yep, there we go. All right. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm broadcasting to you from Indianapolis, Indiana. I've got my good friends here, Bill and Catherine and Karen, and Dan will be on here in just a couple of minutes. And we're going to be talking about the book Leonardo and Gabriel by Tim Tigner. And we are on the chapter entitled Gabriel, which I think is the second chapter. That doesn't have chapter numbers, so we're just kind of, winging it on that. But before we get going, just a couple of things. If you are new to this mastermind and you would like to participate with us, there's going to be a link down below the video on YouTube where you can jump into our Facebook group and just let us know that you'd like to participate. Also, if you go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com, that will take you to a post in our Facebook group that has the link to get into this meeting room, and it has the link to all of our previous recordings as well. And you wanted me to let everybody know today is November 16th of 2019. I guess I never thought to tell people what the date was. But yeah. So anyway, what else was I going to say? There's a couple other things. We're using this new software platform to get into this meeting, and if you're interested in using it, there's a link below the video where you can get in there and you can get a discount on like your first month or get a free month or something like that. And if you do that, then we get a discount on ours as well. So just to let you know that. And then I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can go ahead and jump into the chapter. So jump on out whenever you're ready.
I'm Karen Lohoff, and I live in what is generally the Valley of the Sun, which, if you don't know what that is, that's Phoenix area. I'm in the East Valley of the Valley of the Sun, and today it's not sunny, at least at this moment. That usually goes away really fast. But it's finally pleasant for us. It's not hot.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement from Boulder, Colorado, and I'm giggling because I can't believe we've been doing this how many years and never thought to say the date on our videos.
And I'm Bill, and I'm just a newbie. Come in with Dan. He introduced me to it maybe a year or so ago, and I've been here on and off. It's early morning out here in Olympia, Washington, and it's right. Today's going to be a sunny day, so we're missing some rain. We could use some rain, so enjoy it. When I enjoy this broadcast, when I get on, I listen to some of the recordings, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks. Don't everybody speak up at once.
Great. I know. I'm like, you keep reminding me about the M key for mute, and I'm like sitting here trying to use my mouse to go down to the microphone and unmute myself. I'll have to remember that. So, Karen, do you want to start the discussion?
Thank you. I've been having an interesting experience. I think a lot of times things fall into place in our lives that if you're paying a little bit of attention, you think, how did this happen in this timeline? I realized that with my hair all flat and stringy against my head, you're probably wondering if I'm male or female, and especially with my low voice, I am female, or have been most of my life. And I guess, I recently wrote to a friend of mine, and I haven't thought about this for quite a while, but as we get older, supposedly our genders kind of change, or, we each have both male and female in us. And I guess what changes is that females tend to become more aware of their masculine side. Males become more more aware of their female sides. That can happen anyway. And softer, so forth. Anyway, what I was starting to tell earlier is that I have been reading a book called Fall on Your Knees, which is an Oprah book club recommendation. And because it came from our little library here, I'd never heard of it before. And if it didn't have that little seal on there that it was an Oprah recommended book, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. And I probably wouldn't have stayed with it past, I don't know, maybe 10 chapters, because it was a little bit boring to me. But I'm now halfway through, and I realize that it's giving me a pretty good idea of how it must be to grow up with at least one Catholic parent. That was a situation for these girls, because their mother insisted that they be baptized. Their mother insisted that they go to Mass with her. And then she died. It was actually pretty early on in the stage of her grandchildren, and it's one of those. It took place around World War I, and it's one of those stories where the families get, embroiled in the Depression and World War I and all that kind of thing, and the confusion of families when the oldest daughter had gotten pregnant away at school and actually gave birth to twins and died. And her mother actually did a cesarean birth on her and had to make the decision as to whether the mother would live or the babies would live. And because one of the little girls knew the children would... Hi, Dan. I thought you were saying enough. I'm sorry. Because one of the children knew that, that the babies had to be baptized, she slips these babies out. The mother gets hauled away to the coal bin in the basement by the father, who discovers this daughter of hers has been cut open so these babies can come out. And the father then goes off on a wild drunk. And this little girl takes the babies, they're slimy from having been born. She carries them down the creek, tries to baptize them, drowns them, and then, of course, in the family is that all these children were born of the mother, who was really the grandmother of one of the twins. And as these children grow up, they learn so many things through Catholic. They actually went to Catholic school as well, through repetition. And most of us know that repetition is a real key to our memories. And we're on the part of Gabriel and Leonardo. And so I'm learning, it's so fascinating when you you want me to mute? No, you want Dan to mute. It's fascinating when you get a picture of how, because I was unaware of how Catholics are raised and how their beliefs get inculcated in them. This book is really giving me a picture of that, and it's just really, really amazing. So anyway, and I don't know anything about archangels, so perhaps you might want to share that, because in this portion of the book, Leonardo becomes acquainted with Gabriel, and obviously, the rest of the book is about Leonardo and Gabriel. So, whoever would like to kind of maybe fill me in on archangels um, or any of these other aspects uh, of Leonardo, obviously brushed by training as a Catholic. I don't know how inculcated he was into that training, but I assume there was no other training. There was no other belief system that he could have been um, trained by. So have at it.
I don't know anything about archangels.
Well, I'll jump out for a
Oh,
second,
yeah.
and
Jump out there, Dan.
well, for me, there, there, there are two prevalent ones that, from my reading within the Bible, there is Michael. He's the one that's more of I think he's like the I would say the top angel or whatever, commander of the host, or whatever, on that sense. And he is the one that does a lot of I think I can't remember what part of the Bible it's where Daniel's praying and fasting, and I think it's Michael that end up coming to him after 3 weeks of um, Daniel praying and fasting, and kind of like, not that Daniel didn't believe, or that God would answer or whatever, and God usually uses angels as his tool, I think, for speaking for the most part with uh, certain um, human characters from throughout the Bible. Um, and I think it is Michael that comes in, gives him, lets him know that it's not that God didn't hear his prayers. It's just that in the, and I believe in the heavenly realm, so that in the heavenly realm, um, God's God and his angels and stuff are kind of basically at war with Lucifer, or Satan. Lucifer used to be the highest angel and the one above all angels, and he was called the morning star. And he was, the preeminent angel, and he's the one that fell and took a third of the heavenly host with him. So that he was fighting him just to get to Daniel, to give Daniel his answer to the prayer that he had been praying about. And in that, so it's and then there's Gabriel. I think Gabriel's more the messenger angel, where like he's the one. Hang on, I got to take this call from church, so hang on a second, okay? Sorry.
I just muted Dan out, so anybody else have any comments? I'm not up on archangels.
Can't mute somebody else. It only mutes them for ourselves, but thanks for trying. I can pick up a little bit here, although I am definitely not an expert on archangels, but and it doesn't appear that anybody is, because if you go online and Google, you're going to find an enormous variety of different descriptions and things. But they are evidently the highest angels. There's a question as to how many of them there are. Some of them supposedly have experienced life as a human, where others have not. And oh, I thought Dan was back. I was going to turn it back over to him. My only experience with archangels sounds absolutely insane. Like, I don't know where I picked up on that, about Archangel Michael, but I've always felt that Archangel Michael protected me. I don't know where I got that from. Like, some of you know, I was sent to a lot of different churches and different religions, and I never really ascribed to any of them. But I had an incident where I had someone come into where I was sleeping at 3 a.m, and this person was about 3 seconds before they broke into the room. I came out of a sleep and called out for help from Archangel Michael. Like, I don't even know, I was sleeping. I don't even know how I woke up. I don't know why I called out for Archangel Michael. All I know is I call out for Archangel Michael's protection. And about 3 seconds later, this dude breaks into the room. So, that's about as crazy as it gets. And I have no explanation for it. I believe that I was saved. I believe that incident could have gone way, way bad. And I came out of it unscathed, and my dog almost came out of it unscathed. That was where he was choking her and he was going to kill her, and then I was trying to beat him up. But he was a Marine. I mean, he could have killed both of us in an instant. So I do believe that calling out for that protection, for whatever compelled me to do so, helped, you know. And Dan, come on back in. I was just kind of filling in the holes while you were gone. But each of the archangels, has different specialties. Yes, they're like the highest rank of their whatever they do, healing or protection or whatever.
By the way, Dan, we've learned that you can use your keyboard, just the letter M for mother, and that will mute you right there and be a little less awkward than trying the thing on the screen. And if you get another call, if you'd unmute yourself, and we'll just pop in and then take over, and then you can come back.
Okay, I'm back. I know. I realized I was muted. Sorry. I took that. I had to take that call. I very rarely ever get calls this early in the morning like that, and so kind of threw me off. To finish my thought, Gabriel also, and I don't know what, I kind of caught a little bit of what Catherine was saying, but I didn't catch everything. The other part on Gabriel is I think he was more the messenger angel. Like, he's the one that showed up and told Mary that she was the one who was going to be um, the mother of Christ here on earth. Gabriel appeared, I think, to Abraham a couple times, and a couple other places I can't remember. But that's how I think I remember him, and that's the distinction of. So in this, the way he describes Gabriel and talks about him, and that they kind of have a little bit of free will too, because like Gabriel's the one that comes to him because he wants to share his information with them. That kind of was something I never really looked at or thought about. So now I'll let you guys go back. Because that was my little bit about the archangels.
Okay, that was just a curiosity on my part. We really didn't need to veer off too much on that. I just do think that's interesting. I never thought a whole lot about angels. I mean, I definitely am totally, I mean, part of my belief system from my own experiences is that there is life after death. We continue to live. We don't die, is how I view it. And so really anyone can be an angel, I would think. I mean, I've had experiences with my ex-father-in-law. I've had experiences with um, my mother-in-law, uh, who I served coffee to at my first job at Cody Drug, um, in the little fountain there, and hadn't seen her really since I was in high school. And I don't know that she really thought one way or another about her son. And I finally getting married when we were 40. I've had experiences with my grandmother. I've had experiences with different people, which I think some would refer to as angels, but I haven't had any experience with anybody that would be known across time, like a Gabriel or a Michael or anything like that. And obviously, Leonardo recognized immediately who Gabriel was, which I think is very interesting because part of his dilemma about painting these last two people in the Last Supper was his, uh, you know, was a faith dilemma. So anyway, that's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. It mentions in there about him and his faith dilemma, and then Gabriel shows up and he's just like recognizes him instantly, but then it also mentions his other painting that he did with Archangel Gabriel. What was it called? The annotation and the Annunciation, I think it is. What was it on here? Let me skip. There's a picture of it, and was it? Yeah, Leo da Vinci, 1470s, the Annunciation. Let me see if I can put that here so you guys can see it. I don't know. Can you see that kind of reflection?
A little bit.
There. Okay, well, it's in the book, so you can see it. But I thought that it made perfect sense that he, obviously he would see him the way he had depicted him in his painting. But then I kind of wonder, okay, he is struggling with trying to come up with the face of Jesus and of Judas, and but yet he apparently didn't struggle that much with finding the ability to make the image of Gabriel, which is just really interesting to me. And I wish it kind of like elaborated more on how he came up with that image, um, when he's struggling with the other two, because it seems to me that's a faith related thing too. But I don't know, maybe it was easier for him to believe in angels than it was for him to believe in Jesus, and I don't know. That's just really interesting. But it also kind of dives into the point that well, I mean, he's talking about, or Gabriel's come to him and told him that um, he's chosen him to be um, the one that actually sees God for what he is, because everybody else, the churches and scholars and the priests and all of that, all kind of look upon God from a selfish perspective. And what you got, buddy? You got a bag of wipes for me? Great. Um, I'll let you guys jump out here. Hold on a minute, or I'll be back in a minute. Or not back, but
I was going to say, I wonder if in Gabriel showing up just the way he pictured him, I wondered if that was a way for Gabriel to be able to appear to him, and so that he wouldn't be startled or taken aback or put off or maybe afraid to interact with him as he was going through this, and made it possible. So, oh, I know who you are, because he so instantly recognized him. And I wonder if that was a possibility, that maybe in order to make the introduction easier, Gabriel appeared more in the form of what he you know painted him as, in order to open the dialogue, to help him with coming up with the imagery that he needed for finishing the Last Supper.
I think that's very possible, Dan. I mean, I think spirits do appear to us in forms that we can accept.
I think so too, Dan. And what I was doing while I was off the camera was I was looking for these pictures that my sister sent me. Catherine, if you remember last week, you were mentioning that you had seen Jesus, and I'm wondering.
Yeah,
I don't know if that helps or not. I'm wondering if he looks anything like that, or looked anything like that to you.
Yes, he looked like the traditional form of Jesus that I was introduced to, throughout life. Just the typical when you think of Jesus, that picture of the, bearded guy. My grandmother had this picture of Jesus in her room, and that's the Jesus that appeared to me. But I always questioned whether that was really what he looked like, or whether that's just the form he came to me in, knowing that I would be accepting and not be frightened of that image, as opposed to maybe what he really looks like, because I don't know what he looks like. So I've always questioned that.
Well, and I've read and listened to people who've talked about seeing a black Jesus, a brown Jesus. I don't know about an Asian Jesus, but I think there's a lot to be said. Excuse me, just a minute.
Last week we kind of touched on the somebody had posed the question of whether or not Leonardo's depiction of Jesus was the first one, and I don't think it was. I googled it, and it was saying that in like the Roman catacombs, uh, there were depictions of Jesus earlier than that, and which kind of makes sense in my thought process of that, assuming that Jesus really is a real man and he's not just a symbol of or a um, he's not just a figure in a story, but he's an actual person who actually was on this earth and talking to people and trying to spread the word of God or the message of peace between men. If he's an actual person, then it's possible people really did see him and they did um, make pictures of him. So it wouldn't surprise me if the depictions that have kind of been passed down over the centuries are somewhat realistic. And because I've always felt, I mean, he was a real person. Now as far as religion goes, it could be that it's just been exaggerated over the years. The churches have taken their own idea of what this man was really all about and turned it into something that is self-serving for the church, which is, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But it's interesting to me, though, I guess, that if he was struggling with knowing the face of Jesus, is because he was closer to that time frame than we are by far, and maybe he was just questioning because the churches are so, self-serving, if you will, and maybe he was unsure of whether Jesus was even a real person then, and I don't know, but I don't know. Go ahead, Karen. I know you're back.
Thanks. One of the things that I read in that book, Fall on Your Knees, right before I went to sleep last night, really gave me quite a jar. These little girls needed to bury something, and the one that had actually tried to take the twins to the creek and baptize them actually had a memory of the little boy being taken out of the stream by her father, who'd come up behind her and wondered what on earth she was doing, and never did know what she was thinking. Grabbed the boy up, and then before she ran back in the house, even though it was cold, he said, "Take your gown off," her nightgown. And the little girl remembers that he wrapped the baby in the nightgown, and then he pulled the scarecrow that was in the garden out of the garden, and he buried the baby in that spot and put a boulder over that baby. So when these little girls in this later scene needed to bury something, and they needed to bury it in the night, or so they thought, they went out there and they dug underneath this rock and put what they needed to bury there. But in the process of doing that, they realized that there were a lot of soft-shelled little, my word's not coming to mind, little creatures that were running out from underneath the rock. And that for those creatures, the rock was their sky. And I almost gave a literal kind of little jolt, because I'd never considered that for other creatures on Earth, the sky wasn't the sky, but rather something else atop them. Gabriel points out in his conversation with Leonardo exactly why Leonardo is chosen for this visit from Gabriel to learn what the face of God, well, really what Leonardo explains that he wants to know. He wants to know God. He wants to know all about God. As you can imagine, someone like Leonardo, I mean, as curious as we are, you can imagine that someone like Leonardo would really want to know God. And he says, "You will know God when we are finished." And then there's a part of Leonardo that's afraid that since he doesn't believe he can have reasoning and faith, that he will not be himself. So maybe we can address that.
I like that you brought up the rock and the sky being different for creatures underneath the rock. And my daughter and I were just at the zoo just recently, and we were in the aquarium exhibit where the dolphins are, and so we were in this like cave like area, and then we've got water over us and around us and in every direction, and when you looked up through the water, you could see the ripple of the top of the water. And I had said to my daughter, I'm like, I never really thought about it, but it's just really interesting to think that all the creatures in the ocean, that's the top of the world for them, or it seems to be kind of like the top of the world for them is this like rippling. Well, I mean, you guys know what it looks like if you're underwater and you look at the top. It's all wavy, and the light is coming in different. It's just, I don't know how to describe that. It's all like prism like, and dancing light and all of that, and reflection, and And it's a great reminder to realize that, from that everyone has a different perspective on reality, and we forget that sometimes we all just assume that we all see the same thing when in reality we don't. And so then I think it's great that we can kind of look at it from this is it's that, his whole point of talking to Leonardo is to help him be able to see what other people can't see, and because they're so focused on themselves that they can't see what is really behind the curtain, if you will. Um, anyway, that was my thought on that. It just jumped out.
Well, I know for me that I think, this is the big question that I think a lot of humanity has. I think deep down we all believe in something more out there, and it's just trying to put it into something we can grasp or understand or relate to, or um, get a connection with. So I know for me, like, I know in my experiences, I'm not like literally seeing a figure or something, but I felt a presence, and I've smelled, certain smells, and I would recognize that smell anywhere, and as being part of my connection that I've had with my, couple of experiences in, my um, relationship with or infinite intelligence, or however you want to put it. But for me, I consider God. Um, so in that, I think that is the question that everybody is really wrestling with and fighting with and struggling with, to as well as with our own being, and where do we really fit in this life, and what are we really all about. So that's, I think, the other part of it. 'Cause I can understand, some of Leonardo's struggle. You know, um, to me, how can I paint the face of God when I don't really know what it is, and He's so much more than what I'm painting? You know, because in the Bible, it even talks about that if you were to stand in His presence in all His glory, you unless He unless there's a way that He shows Himself to help protect you, you would die. So that's the other part of it that I wrestle with and have struggles with sometimes too.
What do you guys think about this? The other aspect of this chapter where they're talking about that's what my grandson has to say about it. Where they're talking about this, the they're okay. So he's talking about. Sorry, I keep saying that. How the Bible and the sacred text. He's like, I mean, how can we know what's real and what isn't? And then how the church, they all kind of get their position, or they kind of set their own position based on these texts, but yet at the same time it's a reminder that it says the Gospels according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. For men, it was men who wrote this from their perspective. And one of the things that we got a lot in when I was in school was that God wrote this book, but in reality, it was men interpreting what they think is happening, and they're writing it. And um, because Gabriel's like, where do you think these sacred texts come from? And he says, neither they nor any earthly document was penned by God or delivered by angels. They were all composed by men for men. And it says, he says, don't get me wrong, the Bible and Quran are all full of wisdom and insight, but they are designed to be self-serving. Each was written to facilitate the growth of its religion. And I should point out, no holy book accomplishes our goal. If any text truly imparted a clear and complete understanding of God, everyone would know it, and everyone would not be, and everyone would know it, and we would not be having this conversation. And then he goes on to say, why doesn't the scripture include the revelation you promised to share? Meaning, what is God, or what is truly God? And he says, because the revelation doesn't serve the interests of the church. In fact, understanding how God works doesn't serve any organization's interests. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I find it, I don't know if you can even hear me with him making so much noise in the background. I apologize for that. He's having a good morning, though. I don't know. I mean, I think that it's, I don't know, it's a good reminder that there is a lot of wisdom in many different religious texts, but we have to remember who actually wrote those and take them for what they are versus just assuming that everything that's written in there is just absolute beyond, you know. Anyway, that's my thought for the moment. Sorry, I'm distracted by my grandson. I'm not really flowing with intelligent thoughts right now. I apologize.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking while you were talking about the Bible being written by men and the different churches, and the idea that if it had been written by God, we would all know it, and we wouldn't be having that conversation. I still think the conversation would be there personally, because I think what I have begun to see in the world is that people are at different levels. People are at different levels of understanding, compassion, understanding, knowing themselves, knowing the purpose of life. I saw just kind of a little bit of the Last Samurai yesterday. It was on during lunch, and I happened to sit next to a television, so I can have a chair I can get out of. And I realized that, well, first of all, I didn't understand why it appeared that Confederate soldiers were over in Japan or China or whatever. I didn't really, I obviously didn't really grasp the whole thing, but I didn't understand how Tom, his name was there before I tried to say it. I can't think what his last name is. Tom that you always think about. Tom, he could change from a Confederate soldier who had killed a, I'm sorry. Yeah, not now, thanks. He killed he killed a samurai, like a top samurai, in the process of fighting off a circle of samurai warriors. And there were a couple of high-ranking samurai who were just observing him fight these people off in amazement. And then the next thing I noticed, they've got him over in a village where he's in this home where he's being tended to, and he becomes a samurai warrior. Well, imagine the process of change of thought, perspective, feeling, because I think towards the end, the I mean, I'm judging they were Confederates because it looks like their uniforms to me, which obviously maybe doesn't mean anything, but like this guy that had been in the battle with him before in the Confederate side, and a couple of his attendants come towards him, and the top samurai guy, and of course the American guy, the English speaking guy, says, if you're going to fight against me, we're going to go after you. And he says, I'll be looking for you on the field. And I think when I look at having read Leonardo and Da Vinci all through, that the perspective that Tim Tigner is trying to help us to see about how it must have been to determine what the faces of Judas and Jesus might have looked like, really could change us if we're open.
That's a good point. I think I was following what you're telling us with the samurai movie and the change of complete change of perspective for him to go from one way to a completely different belief system and everything. And and I can relate to that, because over the years, I mean, when I was in elementary school and even in middle school and parts of high school at my Christian school, it was just flat out, this is the law, this is the truth, and don't question it. And I didn't question it, and I even would say to people who were non-believers at the time, it's like, it doesn't really even matter whether you believe it, it's the truth. That was my attitude towards it. It's just, this is how it is, and when you die, it's going to be obvious. And but then over the years, my perspective changed, and I saw that a lot of what was being taught was just, to get me to conform. And and that was when I really started questioning what those things were that they were teaching. And then I cut myself off completely to religion and religious beliefs. And then as I got older and started reading other books and other things like the Tao Te Ching, and just learning about different types of religion, I realized they were all saying the same basic thing. And um, and so I think that, when maybe part of what he's struggling with is not so much, I don't know, and this is all just symbolistic in this book, but I mean, it is not so much of whether or not he makes the face correct, as much as he makes the face so that it's recognizable to everyone from their different perspectives, and to help people be able to see. Um, because I mean, we all come from different backgrounds, and it's not just religious backgrounds, but it's cultural backgrounds and life experiences. And when we as individuals have negative experiences with, say, church or other religious people, it's hard to believe in something when all you're seeing is negativity or bigotry or racism or is there a word for racism and religion? Like, religionism? I don't know. Where people are anti other religions, I mean, it's interesting because I'm like, if we all could just get down to the core information, and we realize we're all just trying to say the same basic things. And so, anyway, that's my thought.
So, Samantha, when I was a kid and they were
Kind
telling me that this is the truth, I was saying, no, it's not. um, yeah, I guess I've just always kind of had that this and I've been through this whole book, so I'm trying to be careful not to say anything that's in the future in this book, because there are parts in the future of this book that I don't agree with at all. But this particular part, I definitely agree with Gabriel. Um, that these texts are full of wisdom and greatness, but they were penned by men. We have nothing that was penned by God other than, like sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and start writing, and it'll be a poem or it'll be something, but I have no memory of it. And so I always feel like that's something that's being channeled through whoever is out there. And I don't know who it is. I'm not saying it's God, it could be some other spirit trying to communicate through me or something. I don't know, because I don't understand any of it. I've had all these strange experiences all my life and never been able to, give a clear explanation. But to go back to different perspectives, one of the things that and it seems so simple, but one of the things that opened my eyes to how differently people actually see things is when I was working as a stained glass artist and I did custom pieces. And so oftentimes I would ask the people to pick out the colors for their piece. And I was completely surprised by how differently people see color. What I see as purple, someone else might see as blue. What I see as red, someone else might see as orange. I mean, and that is just that's like the simplest of the simple, right? Colors were taught: red, blue, yellow, green, purple. And yet each of us sees them so differently. And um, I just, I think that all the spiritual texts, bring the same message forward. Um, but then they were kind of, like Gabriel said, I agree with him here. They were kind of used to promote whatever that institution or that belief system was, to bring, funds in and different things. I'm not saying they didn't do some good things with that or that was all bad. I'm just saying that I think that the texts got um, adulterated in a way. They became a tool as opposed to just the truth trying to come through. Because I have always refused from the time I set foot in a church, I refuse to believe that God has favorites. And that's, again, back to the simplest of the simple. I just don't believe that God has favorites. And as blessed as I feel as I have been, and as many times as I feel a divine intervention has stepped in and saved my life, I don't believe that I'm favored any more than any other person, regardless of, what I look like, what blood's in my veins, or what I believe.
Dan, did you want to go ahead? Bill,
I've
go.
got, along that same line, everybody thinks that God's out there and it's a power and it's it's some type of source. But I've heard this said before, that how much is God is made in man's own image? Just the reverse of what we normally hear. How do we, was it a creation of man to have God? Because we needed because people needed an explanation of how things happened. Uh, just a thought to throw out. I know it's getting late, but that's a where do we stand on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And something that came up for me earlier in our discussion, just a little thing, was is remembering how when the conquerors of the earlier times would come into a new culture, say the Aztecs or the Mayans or the Indians or whatever, they would show up with all their guns and all of their technology, and the locals would kind of see them as, oh gosh, you're like a god because you are able to do something that we don't even understand. And so I thought that was just something that kind of popped up in my thought process along that lines, is to remember it's just something we don't understand, and maybe it seems kind of magical or mystical, and maybe it really isn't all that, and we just think it is because we don't understand it yet. But we are at the top of the hour, guys, and thank you for reminding me of that, Bill, because I wasn't paying attention to the time. Everybody just want to share, and then we'll wrap up, and we can continue our conversation next week. Everybody's got things they got to do.
I just said my piece of what I was coming up with, so I'll leave it at that, and we can cogitate on it through the week to see where we want to go with it.
I'll just say this book really kind of brings up lots of thoughts and lots of things, and for me, I'm glad to be thinking these things. It's and that, but I always wanted to stay open and grow and grow in what I believe and where I make my connections, and to be able to look at other perspectives and take them and put that into what discerning thought. So I'm enjoying this book.
Yeah, I think it's a great book. I'm glad you suggested it, Karen. And it's lovely to be able to come together and speak about such things, without fear of retribution or, being judged or anything like that. Because my whole point, my whole life has been nobody knows. Nobody really knows. Like all we have is stuff that's been said before us or taught before us or written about before us, and we don't know where that information came from. I live in a beautiful place called Boulder, Colorado, and it is so beautiful that the comment I most frequently hear is, this cannot be real. That is what I'm looking at right now cannot be real. It is too perfect. It is too beautiful. It is too glorious. And so, that can shoot us off into lots of other theories about what's going on, but the whole point of it is I don't feel that anybody, and especially myself, can just slam their foot down and say, this is the truth, period. I mean, you can say that about things that you personally experience, that yes, this is the truth of what happened to me or whatnot, but to come out and flat out say, this is what's going on, nobody knows. so, so it's good to get together and discuss the different possibilities. I love you guys.
Well, I want to say I love you guys myself. I just really feel that way too. Catherine, when you came out earlier and said that you went to the different churches and said, when they would say that this was true and that was true, and you said to yourself, no, that's not true. That's what I mean by a different level. I feel like we come from somewhere, and we come from a place of earlier learning and understanding. And I think you've been clear in your life and that's allowed you the experiences that you've had. And I think that you also asked last week, what about the people who visit us? how do they have time, or what form are they, have they changed who they are? Do they all like funnel into one person, or what? I don't know. And I don't mean to twist your words because you didn't say it like that. Um, I I'm reminded of the things that have helped me to break from this uh, attitude that Sam was talking about, which was definitely my attitude when I was certainly in junior high and high school, and that was, if you didn't believe what I believed, well, you just didn't know, because it was true, and you'd find out. You would find out that it was true. And I'm so glad to have broken away from that. And Neville Goddard is one who has really helped me a lot. And he's helped me because his belief was that Jesus' greatest gift to each of us as individuals was our imagination. Our imagination was really what made each of us God. He believed that each of us has the ability to create our own lives, to do anything that we want in our life because of our imagination. And that's just one of many, many beliefs that you can read of different individuals that will surprise you and that will stick with you for years to try and figure out if you can find truth in it. And I also agree with you, Catherine, about when you get through the end of the book, there are things that you don't agree with, right offhand you don't agree with. But it opens up something that likely you never thought of. And so I'll and I just hope we'll have more joining us next week. We are a loving group.
Thank you so much, Karen, for wrapping that up for us, and and I appreciate each of you, Dan and Bill and Catherine. Um, so for anybody who wants to join us, we got an alarm going off. Sorry, husband's phone. Anyway, for anybody who would like to join us, you can jump over to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That'll take you right into our Facebook group, and you can connect with us, or go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com, and that will take you into the post inside our group where you can find the link to join us in this conversation. We like to meet on Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, and we are generally here most Saturdays. Occasionally we take a week off, but anyway, you can always find us. And I think that's it. So guys, have an awesome, amazing weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.